All right, welcome back to the channel. So, I gotta tell you, man, this is hard to make this video because I ain't exactly too friendly about one of these guys that I'm gonna talk about right now. But Josh Taylor, the WBA and IBF 140-pound champion, says that he will knock out Jose Ramirez, who is the WBO and the WBC 140-pound champion, if they fight. No, not happening. But let's talk about it in this. Let's talk about it in this video because it is one of the best fights that can be made in boxing. So let's talk about it in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Josh Taylor, and I got to just caveat here, okay? Or not caveat, what do you call it? Full disclosure here. I did a video about Billy Joe Saunders yesterday, and I was very disrespectful of Billy Joe Saunders. It's because I don't like Billy Joe Saunders, and that's because Billy Joe Saunders attacked me personally. So I have to give that caveat out when I talk about him or I talk about Josh Taylor, because it's the more you deal in the world of boxing doing this type of stuff, the more you start running across professional fighters, and so you get to see and know to a certain extent the professional fighters outside of the boxing ring. And sometimes what you see outside the boxing ring, you don't really like very much. And that's the case with Josh Taylor for me. What I've seen him in the ring, I think the dude is an excellent fighter, and I think that he has a good chance of becoming an undisputed 140-pound champion, and that he would have done it even though he is an older guy, man. He's 30 years old, so Josh Taylor's no spring chicken, right? But he's 30 years old. He's only got 16 fights, but the last, maybe the last 8 fights, the second half of that 16 fights, pretty much from O'Hara Davies through Victor Postal, and I wouldn't really count the Ryan Martin thing because Ryan Martin's just really not that level of fighter. But he showed his worth against Postal and against Jose Ramirez and against Regis Prograis. Now, I think that those guys are like Regis Prograis. I think that he is a lower top tier fighter. It'd probably be the best way to say it about him. I think that Victor Postal is probably a high level second tier fighter. But still, what you see in Josh Taylor is you see that the guy, he can fight orthodox, he can fight southpaw, he can box when he wants to. He's really not afraid to fight. He's got a very tough mentality. He's very Terrence Crawford-ish in a lot of ways, right? In a lot of ways, he reminds me of Terrence Crawford. Now, we're in a world where people, when you say, well, who does Josh Taylor remind you of? They don't necessarily, they might jump out and say, oh, well, he kind of reminds me maybe of a young Joe Calzaghe or, right, something like that, but it's really not right. He just probably looks more like Joe Calzaghe than he would look like a Terrence Crawford. But if you really look at that guy, the way that he fights, it looks very similar to Terrence Crawford. Similar to that 154-pounder whose name I can't recall right now, but I think at 154 pounds, he's like number 1 with the WBA, but he's a Russian fighter, well, Eastern European fighter. I can't say whether he's Russian or not, but he switches very smoothly between southpaw and orthodox, very, very strong, athletic. Somebody else that forcefully reminds me of Terrence Crawford when I watch him fight. Now, that said, Jose Ramirez, that Josh Taylor says he's going to knock out, is also a fighter that is I would say a mid top tier fighter from what I can see at this point in time, because Jose Ramirez can box. Jose Ramirez can brawl. He can come forward. He can fight on the back foot. He's very patient. He's not somebody, I think he's more level-headed than a Josh Taylor is. I think he's more cerebral than Josh Taylor is. But those two guys, man, that fight at 140 pounds for the undisputed 140-pound title, like it's one of those fights that are like the Canelo Alvarez, take out the star power of it. All right. Don't mean the star power of it, because sometimes we get into who's the most famous, who's the biggest name, who's going to make the most, who's making the most money, who has the most fans. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is, when you're looking at two top level fighters and who you think they would match up with the best, regardless of whether or not the promoters, the managers, the networks, or anybody else wants to make that fight, right? So you have fights like Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. You have Jamal Charlo versus Canelo Alvarez. Vasily Lomachenko versus Gervonta Davis, right? Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrence Crawford. At a point in time, it was Jermell Charlo versus Jared Hurd. And honestly, I would love to see Jared Hurd get a fight against Jason Rosario, because I think that Jared Hurd will beat Jason Rosario, and then we can see that fight again between Jared Hurd and Jermell Charlo, the one we were looking for. That's the level of fight that Josh Taylor is and Jose Ramirez is, as far as the talent of the fighters and the even matchup between the fighters. So, but now when Josh Taylor says that he's going to knock out Jose Ramirez, I'm not buying that. I ain't buying it. Don't expect it unless, and this is why I told you like the caveat in the beginning of this thing about how I'm just right now, dude, with Josh Taylor, with what's going on with Tyson Fury, the fact that Josh Taylor stands up for Tyson Fury, the fact that Josh Taylor got caught with cocaine, and the fact, he got charged for possession of cocaine, which was dismissed because they said it was owned by somebody else, or somebody else was carrying it, whatever that means. But then he had the racial menacing that he pled guilty to. So right now, I might look at Josh Taylor a little more side-eyed than I usually would. But regardless of all that, if you're not able to knock out a Regis Prograis, because Regis Prograis fought him what in my opinion. I personally scored the fight for Josh Taylor, and I think that that's a good win for Josh Taylor. However, I think a good amount of why he won that fight and was able to do able to get it on the scorecards is because he was fighting in his hometown. And I don't know of other than just maybe one time that Josh Taylor's ever fought outside of the UK. I do believe he fought on the undercard for Carl Frampton, Leo Santa Cruz, maybe 3-4 years ago. I think he was on that undercard, but I think that's the only time that he's ever left the UK to fight. So on the big scale, you're going to have to wonder when he comes over to fight Jose Ramirez, because that fight with Jose Ramirez is going to be in the United States. It's not going to be over there. And more than likely, it's not going to be in the UK unless, Bob Arum is just really trying to throw, Josh Taylor to the wolves out there in the UK and have him be in kind of a funky situation. I don't know if Bob Arum would be willing to do that. But if the fight's in the UK, then hey man, I might give Josh Taylor the advantage to win the fight. But if the fight's in the United States, but even if it's in the UK, I don't believe he's going to be able to knock out Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez can do too many things on the back foot and coming forward to have Josh Taylor be able to walk through him. And unlike everybody else, that Josh Taylor, with the exception of, Victor Postol was bigger than Josh Taylor. But I do believe that's about it, right? Of the high level fighters that Josh Taylor fought that were the same size as him. When he fights Jose Ramirez, he's going to be fighting somebody that's the same size as him, just as long a reach, if not a slightly longer reach. I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but I do remember the height being very similar. I think they're both 5'10", right? And they're both guys that are going to wind up being at 147 pounds, eventually maybe even 154 pounds for Taylor and Jose Ramirez. But the knockout, forget it. The fight itself, if Josh Taylor boxes, if he boxes, he might have a chance to pull that off. If he's going to be the dude, if he's going to try that gung ho shit that he tries with most times he fights, Nah, dude. Jose Ramirez is going to catch him coming in with something. Jose Ramirez is going to fight. Jose Ramirez on his back foot is going to be able to handle Josh Taylor with that because of the length of Jose Ramirez's jab and the proficiency of his straight right hand. The switching and all that stuff might cause some type of problem for Jose Ramirez, but I don't see it. I don't really see it causing too much. And I lean towards Jose Ramirez beating Josh Taylor in that fight. But again, it is most certainly a fight that I want to see. It is a fight that I think would be really, really good for boxing. And I do believe that it is truly a fight between the two best guys at 140 pounds. The only guy that I say would fit in there with those guys at 140 pounds is Regis Prograis. And also a guy that has probably the best 140 pounder has no interest in fighting at 140 pounds, and that is Mikey Garcia. But Mikey Garcia versus Josh Taylor, I think Mikey Garcia beats Josh Taylor. I think Mikey Garcia can beat Jose Ramirez, and it would be a good fight. But he's not in that weight class. But this is the best of the actual two, all of the belts at 140 pounds. Anyway, it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And I hope I tried not to be too disrespectful to Josh Taylor, but it is really tough on me right now. It's really tough on me right now to pull out, not to go full-time petty on him. Anyway, it is what it is. And with that, I'm out. Peace.